Hey everyone, it's Bobby from Coding here, and today I'm going to show you how to build a Django app from the ground up that is completely production ready. Let's jump straight into it. Okay, so this video will be relatively long compared to my previous videos. It's because we are building from a blank canvas to the point where the Django app is quite literally ready to deploy. So everything from starting up a project, creating models, views, forms, wiring it up to a template, everything. So this website is for a local charity, which is a preschool in the village where I live. They've approached me to create this website. So I want to show you how I go about working on a project such as this. The very first thing you need to do is install and activate a virtual environment on your machine for this project. The reason we do that is because we don't want to be installing things globally on our machine. We want to keep them within the confines of this virtual environment. It just means that we can install a whole bunch of stuff that is specific to our needs on this project. Okay, the way we do that, so let me just backtrack. This is VS Code. I've got a new terminal open. I've got a project on my machine called Preschool. You can see I've already got a directory in there called Front End. I have already purchased and downloaded a template. It's a HTML based template from ThemeForest. So we're not going to be designing any of the HTML, CSS. We will be doing some JavaScript, but essentially, you know, this is straight out of a template. It costs like $17. Yeah, it just speeds things up, right? And it means that we've got a beautiful website and it costs relatively nothing, pretty much nothing. So that's why I've got a front end directory there. Right, so virtual environment. So we need to call Python -m tag, and we'll have venv, and we will call it venv. That'll go about and it will install a virtual environment in the directory where the terminal is active. You can see I'm active in users, Bobby's development, preschool. Right, it's done that. We've now got this file here. To activate it on Windows, you need to put venv scripts. Oh, I've got a Z in there, yeah. And then / activate, keep doing that, activate.bat. Activate, there you go, my typing's great. There you go. So the reason I know this virtual environment is now active is because venv is in brackets on the left hand side there. Okay, so what is clear on this? CLS, there we go. So I've got an active virtual environment. If I now go pip freeze, it will show me everything that's already in there, which is absolutely nothing. So the first thing we need to do is install Django, because Django is the web framework that we'll be using for this project. So we need to go pip install Django. That'll go ahead and that will use PyPy, which is a package manager, to install Django into our virtual environment. And that'll only take a couple of seconds. And as soon as it's gone ahead and done that, it should allow me to put pip freeze, and you can see that it's installed Django and a couple of other bits and pieces. There we go. So pip freeze. Happy days. So we've got Django. We can call Django or Django admin from our terminal because it's in our virtual environment. So the first thing we need to do when starting a project is to call the start project command from Django admin. Django-admin start project, and we'll call this pre_school. That has worked. So what have we got? We've now got, do you know what? I'm not going to do that. Delete. I'm going to say same command with a period at the end. And there we go. Now it's just, the reason I've done that is because how it installed it previously, it created a directory, and within the directory it then had another directory called preschool, and it just got a bit scrappy. I wanted the directory set up to be like this. So the preschool, essentially the conf or configuration directory, is in my root directory. Okay, and then I've got a manage.py file in there as well. Okay, so let's keep that clear. So what we now need to do is to set up, before we start creating applications, we need to have a look at our settings and configure it in a way that allows us to deploy to production. So straight out of the box, if we look in the preschool directory now, this is our conf directory. It comes with an init.py file, nothing in there. Got an ASCII, a WSGI, settings.py file, and a urls.py. Okay, so that's straight out of the box. We've then got a manage.py file. This is the command that we would call python manage.py and run a whole bunch of management commands that come out of the box of Django, such as create super user, such as collect static, so things like that, right? So that comes straight out the box, but that's great when you're working locally. It gets a little bit scrappy when you're trying to deploy to staging or a production environment. So I set up my projects in a different kind of way. So within preschool, we will set up a new directory called conf. And to make this work, you do need a constructor file. So we need a dunder init file. Okay, so that just tells Python that it will instantiate this directory. And then we'll have a new file in here called common.py. So this will be our base settings file. We'll then have a development file, a staging, and a production file. Each of them will have different settings, which becomes really, really helpful when you're trying to deploy. It saves having to have a whole bunch of if statements and things like that. So if debug is true, then you do this and da 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 da. That way it's explicit and it just stops the risk of messing around with settings in different environments. So we've got a common.py file. Let's go ahead and copy all of our settings, dump them in there. So what I did there, I looked at settings.py, which is here, copied everything. So Control A, copied it, and I pasted it in common. So what we now do is we will have a new file in here called dev.py. And 1 second, I've got a couple of instances of VS Code open on my machine here. I did have, one of them has my notes. So throughout this video, I will be referring to my notes because as much as I like to say I've got a great memory, I do tend to forget certain things, and it's not always ideal. So what we do is we now need to inherit from common or start. So what we're doing there. So from .common, which is this file here, we're importing everything. So dev.py, which would be our development settings, will inherit from everything in common. And don't worry, we'll mess around with the common.py file soon. We'll add some apps and middleware and everything else, but we're just constructing the setup, right? So with dev, copy, change the name. We'll call this stage. We'll do it again, and we'll call this prod. Okay, so now all of them, the settings files that come straight out of the box of Django are pointing to a settings.py file. We need to change that, okay? Because what we don't want to do is be looking at a file that doesn't exist. What we need to do is look at the new conf file. So what we're going to do, so I'm just going to look at my notes here. We are going to change how the WSGI file manages this. So this is wsgi.py. And you see this is looking at preschool.settings. Now what we want to change that to is preschool conf.dev. Okay. We want to then copy that, paste it, rename, and this will be wsgi.stage. In stage, we want to be looking at the stage.py file. And lastly, create one for prod. Now, these are just things you want to do it now rather than messing around later. It's, you know, for the sake of 5 minutes work, it just saves us a lot of messing around. Manage.py, it's doing exactly the same as looking at the settings file. Conf.dev. Rename to be manage.stage. Now, when we move this to different environments, what we do, we would just simply change the name of manage.stage to manage.py when it's in the environment. Now you can use any CI/CD type tooling like Circle CI or GitHub Actions and packages to do that. So you can just use scripts to copy over manage.prod.py over to your production environment and then change the name of that file. And that way it all fixes itself. Okay, so all is good. So it's manage.rod. So did we change that? No, we didn't. So in stage, we want that to be stage, not .py, just stage there. And then in this one, we want it to be prod. Happy days. That's everything. We're not using this ASCII file. We no longer need the settings.py file. Delete that. What's URLs doing? That's all good. No worries there. In it. Just double checking everything. Great. So we need to save all of these because it looks like I didn't bother saving them. No, there isn't. Typical. I thought I saved them. All right. Let's close all of these down. There's nothing worse than having everything open at the top there. Cool. Okay, so that is our settings file. That is our so what we've just done there is we have installed Django into our virtual environment. We've started a project, and then before we went any further, we've just changed the way that Django configures everything, so that this allows us to push the code to different environments in a much easier and slicker way. We've done it now. We don't need to go back and change any of that. It's good to go. So what we now need to do is create a requirements directory to do the same sort of thing. So if we go in here and go pip freeze, I'll give a list of everything that we've got installed in our virtual environment. We then go pip freeze, tell it where to freeze it to. We can go requirements.txt, and that will save it into a file here called requirements.txt, which is great. But again, we're going to have certain requirements in development that we don't need, or we don't want in production. So what I tend to do is I create a directory called requirements, and then in there I have new file. This is base.txt. Rename. Oh, don't want that. It's not working. Rename that to stage. Rename that to prod. Again, these are just little things that if you get it done now, you just have not mess around at a later date. So now if we change this command here and say, change that, I want an S on that. So requirements, change that to base.txt. That should, there we go. We've now got it all added into our base.txt. Now what I didn't do is add this. So at the top of the dev, we're basically we're extending from base.txt. That's essentially, so we're going to have some common requirements, and we're going to have requirements that are specific to the environment. So now the requirements for dev would be requirements/dev.txt, and anything that we put in here, so it could be pillow, for instance. Pillow would only appear in the dev environment. It wouldn't appear in prod or stage. Okay, that'll make a little bit more sense as we carry on with this tutorial. Okay, right, so that's the requirements done. Next thing we need is environment variables. Let's look at those. So what I tend to do is I tend to have a file in here called .env. Okay, so just be careful if you're ever using Git. We're not going to be pushing this to Git in this tutorial, but the .env files you should add it to a .git ignore file, because you don't want to be pushing your environment variables to GitHub. All right, so just to pre-warn you there. Okay, so how are we going to construct this? So let's start with one. First one, nice and easy. So we have this line here, so it's a bash file, and then we use the syntax export space, and then the variable in this case is going to be debug, and it's a boolean, so it's a 1 or a 0 or true and a false, and this is equals 1. So in development, we want to be in debug mode. So Django, when there's an error, it will show in a browser a URL not a URL, a UI of the error that's occurred. It's really, really helpful. When debug is set to 0, you won't get that. You'll just be hitting 404s and 500s and things like that. Okay, so debug is one of the environment variables that we'll be using. So now if we go back in a preschool and go into conf and go into common, let's have a little look at this. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of gumph at the top here. I tend to delete all of this. And then we've got the base directory. So what that's doing, so base directory variable becomes kind of the root of what we're looking for here. So at the minute it's set to parent.parent. Okay, so that would have worked if we didn't create this conf file, but because we've created a new layer of directories, we need to go parent.parent.parent. You might forget to do that. If you do forget to do that, then don't worry too much. You'll get the printout on the logs or in the terminal, or if not in the browser itself. Okay, so we've got this here, debug equals true. So what we want to do, just looking at my notes again, we're going to, where are we? Okay, so what we're going to do is in our dev environment, yeah, this is specific to develop. So we're going to go from .env, we'll install it in a second. We want to load .env, and so this is python.env, I think it is. And every time you want to install a package, this is the Django docs, by the way, what you can do is you go pip install python.env, I'm sure it's called that, python.env, there you go. So this is PyPy, this is a package manager, this is where we install things from using pip. So okay, so when you install Python on your local machine, you get access to pip or pip3. You can copy this. This will install the latest version. However, if you're using an older version of Django or older version of Python, you might need to go through the release history and select the right version that is compatible with your local environment. This is why we have the virtual environment, right? So if you're working on 10 projects, you might use one that's on Django 2.7, another one that's on 3.2, another one that's on 4.0.1. Just check out the release notes because not all of them are compatible, okay? So we'll copy this, go back in here, look at our terminal again, pip install python.env. Now we'll freeze that base. Always remember to do that because if you don't, if you close this down or install it on a different machine, it just won't install all of the correct packages. We go into requirements now, you'll see that we've got python.env in there. Okay, so all is good. So we now have access in dev to from .env. You can see this now no longer got a problem with the import. I'm using Visual Studio Code. It isn't an IDE, but it acts like one with the extensions. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, you've got extensions here. Just install a whole bunch of stuff that I've got. All sorts of stuff in here, Django templating, Python, I've got Docker, all sorts of stuff. If you start installing really, really popular packages, it really helps you out when you're trying to code. So I won't go for the docs of python.env, but essentially you've got to import load.env and then you need to call that function. That way we have access to an env file in the root directory, which is really, really important. Okay, and then we will go ahead and we will do this. Okay, so we will say debug in this project is equals to, we need to import OS. It's a Python package called operating system. It allows us to access a whole bunch of, well, OS is a really good library that allows us to access environment variables. So we can say os.environ get, we call this debug. Okay, so what's happening there? We are now accessing this here. If I was to change that to 0 and then run the application, debug would be turned off. But we want it turned on. Okay, so that's all good. The next thing we want to do is add a whole bunch of other envs. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So what we'll do is secret key. key equals, and we will have this just as preschool. But the secret key in production, actually in common, you'll see what the secret key is looking like. So, you know, you've got all of this going on, which is fine. You'd use something more secure than just a single word in production. Because we're in dev, it doesn't really matter. Providing we've got something as a secret key, that's what's used when we're creating passwords. The hashing of passwords, we use the secret key to do that. So it's quite important that you have a much more, you know, a good secret key, a good solid secret key in production. So we're just called it preschool. No dramas there. We'll have Django allowed hosts. So this is now, I'm going to copy it across now. Django allowed hosts. In development, we want local host, and the IP is 127.0.0.1. And just keep this all in there. This is how we want to have it in export. And I'll show you how to bring that into the settings. It's written differently in here. So allowed host is just an open list. And in which case you would just manually add local host in there. But like I say, this is a production ready app that we're trying to build here. So there we go. Django host. Is there anything else that we need? No, I don't think, I think that's it. So let's have a secret key. And allowed hosts, we need to do it in a slightly different way. Let me show you what that looks like. There we go. So allowed hosts. Again, we're looking in an environ using the get method, and we've got Django allowed hosts. But in this case, we're using it, so it comes through as a string. So we're using a string method called .split, and we're looking for a space. So this will create a list with each of them broken down by the spaces into a list. So we have a list with localhost, and then it'll have 127.0.1 in there. So that's all good. So now with common, what we can do, we can go ahead and we can delete the secret key. We don't need that anymore. Don't need that. Actually, what we'll do, copy all of this, drop that in prod, because we need that as well, right? And we'll drop that in there as well. So stage and prod are now identical to dev. And just making sure it's big enough for you to see. We don't need allowed hosts anymore. What we do is, right, I normally create installed apps slightly different to this. I like to break it down into Django installs, third-party application installs, and then project installed apps. Okay, so it just breaks it down. It means it's a lot easier to read. So we'll go ahead and do that. So first of all, copy that down. So rather than installed apps, I've got Django apps. Now you can see here we've got admin, auth, content types, sessions, messages. Then I've got static files, but then we've got sitemaps and sites. Now the reason we've got sitemaps and sites is because when we deploy, it's good to have an XML sitemap for the SEO of your site. So just add that in there straight away. We will need it. Because we've added sites, we're going to need a different variable in here as well. Don't worry about that. Got third-party apps. Don't worry about those for now. Some apps that we install using pip require us to add that third-party app into our installed apps for it to all activate and have access to the URLs and the models and things like that. And then we have the last one is just called apps. Okay, we'll be adding to that in a second. Now, installed apps looks like this. So installed apps still needs to be in our settings file, but now installed apps is just joining 3 lists together to have like a mothership of lists. Okay, so installed apps is now in there. As we've added sites, we need to add a variable in here called site ID and default that to 1. Okay, you need that when you're installing Django contrib sites. Don't forget to do that. What else have we got? Middleware. We won't change that for now. Yes, we will. We will install a package whilst we're messing around with settings called, just Google Django debug toolbar. Super helpful. There we go. Go into PyPy, and if you copy that, go into your terminal. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure this is all big enough for you to see. There we go. We'll freeze that to base. And then installed apps. What we need is, come on. We need this in there, so debug toolbar. That means we can activate that in the project. And we can then, we now need to add some middleware. So if you look at the docs, it tells you how to install, right? So Django debug toolbar, read the docs, just that install process. What have we got? So install debug toolbar. You need to make sure you've got static files. You need a static URL. We'll come to that in a second. We need templates with appders equals true. So we need to make sure that this is standard in the Django app, but if you're using an older version, it might not be. We need debug toolbar in installed apps, which we've just done. And then we need to add some bits to the URLs, which we'll do. And then lastly, we need to add some middleware. So we're going to add this middleware, and it needs to be, is mostly implemented in a middleware. Add it to your middleware setting. I normally add it right at the top. I don't think it really matters. It can go anywhere. Let's stick it at the bottom. Okay, that's the middleware. I use single. You can use double, but I use single. Okay, so debug toolbar is now installed. We will add some bits and pieces to the URLs conf file, which is this one, as per the docs, but we'll do that in a second. Let's focus on the settings for now. Back to common. What we got? The root URL conf preschool URLs. That's pointing to this file here. Okay, so that's where all of the URLs from applications will be channeled to the URLs conf file, which is this one here. That's how we get access to all the URLs in the project. Okay, we're going to set this project up with the normal Django syntax is that with templates, so HTML templates that are rendered, they fall within the applications in a certain format. You need to have a directory called templates. Within that, you need a directory called the same name as the application, and then your templates. I find that a little bit convoluted, so I tend to create a directory called templates in the root directory. So let's go ahead and create that now. Can't spell or can't type. There we go. So now this does, which is a keyword, key value pair. It's a list, and then we name where that templates directory is. So now templates as a directory, it will be included when Django is searching for templates. Okay, all of this is good. Let's add a context processor. So if you're new to Django, when you render a page into a browser, Django will create a context dictionary that is accessible in the way of variables in the HTML. Now we can add to that. So we can make sure that context always has certain variables accessible, which is really helpful if you have things like Facebook URLs or contact emails and things like that. Rather than passing it through in a view, I like to add that to the context processor so it's accessible in every single template. So let's go ahead and create one. Context processor, is it processors that I'm looking for? That doesn't really matter. What we'll do is we will create in here project context, pass through request, and we will have context equals a dictionary, return context. Okay, I'm just trying to see if there's anything fancy we need to do in there. Okay, so what we can do is let's just add something in there. my email. Okay, so my email will now appear in the context in the browser, and I can access it in the HTML when I'm wiring up the front end, and my email will always be in there, providing I wire it up to the context processors in the templates variable in the settings. That's right, so templates variable is a list, and in here we've got options, we've got context processors. So now we need to tell context processors key value pair where to look for our context processor. Let's go ahead and find it here. So it'll be called preschool dot context processor dot project underscore context. Happy days. So now we can keep adding to this. It's really, really helpful because if you just keep firing context into certain views, it can get a little bit complicated. I mean, if using class-based views, you can pass them through as in the way of like an abstract or OOP, but essentially, if it's something that needs to be accessed on every single page, like a header or a footer, context processors are the way to go forward. Okay, so where are we? Let's go back to common. Okay, WSGI application. Remember we changed this. So preschool WSGI application. What that's looking for is this one here. Okay, so that is basically, that's how we're handling the WSGI. And then we've got database. So we will pick this up and we'll drop that into dev. The reason I'm doing that is because we'll use a different database in production to what we're using in development. So in development, straight out of the box, Django uses SQLite 3. In production, we can use MySQL, PostgreSQL, a whole bunch of different kind of object-orientated or relationship-based databases, SQL databases. So, but we're going to be using SQLite 3 in development. So we will dump that same configuration into production for now, just so that we've got a databases variable in there. But when it comes to deploying, let me close all these down. Stage. When it comes to deploying, we'll change that, right? So, and the same goes for the next setting that I'm going to be looking at. So don't worry about, I've yet to change any of these auth password validators. I normally keep them pretty standard. Let's change this to ENGB. I'm in the UK. I'm going to have time zone. I'm not UTC. I'm going to go London, oh, sorry, Europe, London. And then keep the rest as true. Again, change them as appropriate to yourself. And then we've got static URLs. Right, okay, we will be using static files in this project. And there's I always set them up in the same way. Okay, so I'm going to just drop in some static file stuff in here. I'm going to delete that from common because we don't need it in there, but we do need it in dev, production, and staging. Okay, I have it like this. So you need a static files DIRs list, and within there, you then detail where your static and media directories are. You need a static URL and a media URL variable. And then you have to stipulate a static root and a media root. Now, I won't going to do a deep dive on static files, but you need to get them set up correctly because this is how we do things like run the collect static command. This is how, when we render a page in a browser, this is how we find static files such as CSS, JavaScript, and this is how the website interacts with it. So it's important that you do a little bit of a read up on what static files are all about and how they work. But this is my setup, okay? So we need a static files DIRs, static URL, media URL, static root, media root. We set it up very, very differently in production if we're going to be starting to wire up things like DigitalOcean spaces or AWS buckets, S3 buckets and things like that. Because you can use packages such as white noise to do it all in app, but I tend to wire up things like spaces, like I say. So we need to point the root directory to AWS or DigitalOcean spaces. Okay, so, but for the time being, let's drop the same configuration in prod and stage. We'll worry about that later. Okay. Okay, common. And then as from, was it Django? I think it was 3.8 or 3.9. they introduced this default auto field. If you remove that, I think it still works, but it comes back with all sorts of warnings. So don't worry about that. So that is our settings file sorted. We've now got a dev settings file that extends from common, and we've got this other stuff going on here, such as the secret key debug allowed host that we have stored in our .env file, which is there. The way if you do add that to a git ignore file, what I would do is I would create an env template. I would drop all of this in here, and if I had something such as export, let's say stripe key, what I would do, I would just have add yours, make that as a string, add yours here. Right, okay, so when somebody clones down a repository on a local machine, they know the first thing they need to do is to go through the env file or create a new .env file from env template and then change and add their own keys into that file. Okay, so that's what I would do. But this isn't going to Git just yet. So, okay, what now? So we've gone through settings, but we need, right, so we've just pointed our static files set up to these directories that don't exist. So let's go ahead and create them, right? So new folder, call it media, new folder, call it static. Okay. Now, whilst we're doing the static files, right, you know I've downloaded a template. With that template comes a whole bunch of assets. Okay. Depends what you buy or what you have created. These can be constructed and go into a directory called assets, followed by CSS fonts, Sometimes you don't have the assets directory, and the CSS directory is in the root. But I'm going to keep it exactly as is. So I'm going to cut that. No, I'm not. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to drop that directly into my static directory I've just created. Okay? That'll all mean something soon enough. So we've now got a media and a static directory. A static root and media root equals static files and media files. If we were to run python manage.py collect static, it would create those, but we won't run that. Media and static are the roots, so it will default to the root before it goes to it will default to the URLs, which are the paths, before it goes to the static root. Okay, they're the setting files. Let's now look at the URL conf file. So what are we doing here? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Right, okay, so what we need in here is add include after URL's path from Django doc. I know this one, I use it all the time. Oh, still can't spell it though. From Django.conf import. FYI, I've had a lot of comments on my YouTube channel that copying from one screen to another doesn't really explain what we're trying to do. My feedback and response to those messages always is that my typing is really poor. But look, I'm giving it a go, so bear with me. So we're importing settings. So this URL conf, the URL patterns, so straight out the box, we have this admin URL. So it'll be localhost port 8000/admin, takes you to the admin URL, which comes straight out of the box of Django. Now you can change the URL, you can call it admin-page, you can call it what you want, but essentially Django will allow you or give you access to a built-in Django admin page, which is really, really good. So the next thing we need to do is what we've got. Handlers. I'm just trying to make this as simple as possible. Okay, right, so we're going to leave that as it. No, we're not. We're going to add this. I think that's it. No, we're not. I'm going to add this as well. Right, okay, so we don't want to do we? So I'm looking at another screen. I do normally add. Let's go ahead and do it, right? Okay, so in here, I normally add another variable in here called production. The reason I have this is because debug is Boolean, true or false. Now we can have 3 environments. So in the staging environment, you might want to have like a VPN access to it. So you can only certain IPs can access that environment, but you want to still display a debug, the debug from Django. You definitely don't want to do that in production because it displays a whole bunch of sensitive information. So what we want is debug true, but production 0 would signify that they're staging. Does that make sense? So debug 1, production 0 is dev. Debug 1. No, actually, right. So debug, what am I trying to say here? So production, debug. So what we want is always in production. Right, no, so it is for the static files. So if the only time we want to be serving up our static files from the AWS bucket is if production is true. That's why we've got it in there. So that's one of those legacy type variables that I don't do much with. So in dev here, what we'll also do is we'll add that there. We will add that there. So I've got a coffee here. I'm going to do a marathon video about any cuts, so bear with me. I need to keep hydrated. There we go. We've now got production there. If we go back to the URL conf, that will now make sense. So settings.production, got access to that. And what we're saying is add to the URL patterns list, and we will basically append or add to the list the static URL and the static root. Okay, so that's how you need to construct it. It can't find static because we haven't imported it yet. That's one of the imports I needed to remember. I can never remember it. So let's go ahead and add that there. Okay, so now we have the URL conf working, we've got the settings working. Next thing we're going to look at is, just looking at my notes, is we've got debugging, happy days. That's it for now. I'll add logging, but I'll do logging. I'll add logging in a little while. No, I won't. I'll do it now. So this is a well thought out, well planned out video. So bear with me. Right. So logger. What are we doing here? This is easy enough to add. I'll do it now. But if not, well, we'll do it later. Is there anything else I need to think about here? No. No, we're not. We're not going to add login. No, we're not going to add login. Okay, so this is, like I say, this is I'm doing a favour for a local charity. So we're going to get something live, and then I'm going to expand on it. For instance, they want to implement an e-commerce app later, not straight away. So I might do a second video to this, which expands on this project, adds e-commerce, things like that. And what I might then wire up is Sentry to do app health. And make sure that login is wired up, so if there's a 500 error, I get notified, things like that. We won't do login for now. It is an important thing for production, but when you've got a very basic website, it's not a necessity. It's a nice to have. Big complex microsites, logging is paramount. Right. Let's have a look what we got. So this is all good, right? So if we've got the settings set up. I've got envs, everything's working. It's not, the app's not going to do much. We might have an admin page, but that's about it, right? So what we now need to do is we need to say Python manage.py. I can never remember. We will make migrations. If it works, that's great. No changes detected. Okay. So what we're doing there, making migrations. So models in Django are a representation of a database table. Okay, so if you create an app and create a model, when you make migrations, it stages those changes into a migration file. When you run manage.py migrate, it then migrates those migration files to the database. So kind of a two-step process. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, there we go. We're going through, and you can see by migrating, let me make that a bit bigger. By migrating, there's a whole bunch of tables, um, models that come built into Django. So they're authentication. So you get a user model that's straight out of the box. We'll have a look at that, shall we? Yeah, so let's go ahead and go Python manage.py run server. That should work. There we go. Now this was saying the server's running locally. Okay, so if we now go into a browser and go to localhost 8000, because that is in the allowed hosts, there is no homepage. We haven't got that URL wired up. But what we do have is admin. /admin. I'll take you to here. Okay, toggle theme, dark theme, light dark. Oh dear, that's not looking good. Right, that might be because I'm not incognito. So basically, CSS is already cached from some other project that I'm working on. Let's have a look. Is this gonna? There we go. Happy days. Right. Okay. So you've got light dark. That's obviously, so that's a new version of Django. In the old version, you didn't have light dark. So the old version, just the CSS wouldn't work. So gone incognito, which is Control-Alt-N. It will give you a completely blank slate, and it will load all CSS from the static files. Okay. If we go back in here, actually, by running the server and getting it all configured. Oh no, it's just coming from the app. Don't worry about that. It's if you collect static, it'll be in there. Right, let's go back in here. No, we won't. What we need to do first is need a new terminal. Environment is running. We need to create a super user. Python manage.py create super user. What that'll do, it'll ask you for a username. Or it'll be default. Don't worry about email. Bang in a password. Happy days, we'll create a super user. Now we can sign in. Sign in with the same username and password you just created with. Brilliant. This is the admin page. Right, so the reason I wanted to show you this is because we've added sites into the installed apps. But even if we didn't do that, the other installed apps that you should and always use brings in a groups model and a users model. So if I click in users, I've just created this user, Bobby, right? So I've used that from the CLI. So Python manage.py create super user. However, you can create it directly in the UI. This is what I really love about Django, right? So we can call Bobby2. So you don't need to do it from the CLI. You can, once you've signed in, you don't need email. Active, so you can give them staff and super user statuses. This active is really good because if you mark it as inactive when it's created, you can then send an email verification link. When they click it, it activates the account. So it's really helpful. So we click save. We'll have another one in here called Bobby2. The sites is great if you're using multiple sites, right? So we're not, but we've got sites included. You need it for Django toolbar, debug toolbar. You will need to change this. Just call it localhost 8000. That's it. Okay, so the project's working. The fact that we're looking on here says that the project is working, everything's installed, we've got no errors, the configuration's good. So let's go ahead and create our first app. The way you do that is in here, you go Python manage.py. You don't need to call Django admin anymore because Django is already running. We've already got it installed. The application's there. So now we can just call Python, and then we point it towards the file we want to use as the manager, and then we use the command. In this case, it's start app. Why is it one word? It's probably one word. Start app. Give it a name. We're going to call this core. So give you a bit of background about this project. It's a website. It's going to have a homepage and about us page. They want to publish events. So we're going to need to capture events in a model. They've got a whole bunch of policies because they're working with children, they're charities, so they've got terms and conditions, privacy policy, GDPR, working with children, loads of policies. So we're going to need a policy. All of these, I mean, you could create different apps, so an events app, cause app, think that. I'm going to bundle it all into one app because I don't see there being that many different database tables. So I'm going to call it core. Okay, press enter. We now have a core app here. You need to go back in a common. And if you remember, in the common settings file, we have the installed apps, right? Remember, we've got this one called apps. Core. Okay, good. What we're going to do in core is we're going to create a new file. So let's look at this. Right, so core comes with a whole bunch of stuff. Right, migration files, nothing in there other than a constructor. Got a constructor file in the main core app. But admin.py, that's where you tell Django what to render in the admin page. Apps, this is where you can, this is just the general config of the app itself, but this is where you can wire up things like signals. Got models. Models are a representation of a database table. Test.py, and you've got views. We need a URL file. So, new file. Okay, what we're going to do in here, these will be the URLs specific to the cores app. The reason I do that is because rather than having them all listed in the URL conf file, it means that we can specify URLs to the app that they live in. It's really, really helpful. So if I just look at what I've done somewhere else. So from Django.urls import path. Older versions you'll be importing URL, RE path and things like that, but we'll use path. From dot import view. So we're importing everything from the views file, and then we want to give it an app name equals core, and then we want a URL patterns, and there's a list. Okay, that's it for now. Give it a bit of space, save that. Now we want to wire up that to our URL comps file in preschool, which is in here. So underneath admin, what we want to do is add, where is it? There we go. Copy. I'm going to stick it above debug. So path. What you could do is you could have core. So everything in the core app is appended with, so it would be localhost 8000 core home, core about. And that's what's really helpful by having them kind of encapsulated in an application. But we won't do that. We're just going to have it as blank. So if it's a home page, it will be localhost 8000 home or nothing at all. If it's about, it'd be /about, so on and so forth. So that's all wired up. So all of the URLs within the cores app now will work. Bang on. What we want to do now is when creating a, sorry, I'm getting notifications left, right, and center. Sorry about that. I had a couple of bits I needed to do. So yeah, we've created the application, which is all good. The URLs are good to go. So now we need to look at the application and work through it in order so that all makes sense. The first thing I always look at is models. Okay, so I create my database tables first because we'll be importing those into the admin directory. We'll be importing them into forms. We'll be importing them into views. Okay, so I always start with models first. Let's go ahead and do it. Now the app does come with a models file. We don't want that. What we want is a new file in here, a new directory called models. We need a constructor in there called init.py, and then we have a file for each model. Now, I always do this. I find it, I used to do it slightly different. I used to just have the models.py file and have a whole bunch of stuff going on. Swings and roundabouts, there's, arguments one way or the other. But I like to have a file specific to the model itself. It just makes it easier to import. You can remember different things better. I just find it easier. Okay, that's why. So we've got a whole bunch of privacy policies to store in a database. We've got a whole bunch of events. We've got a whole bunch of, we want a way of rendering team members into the website. So team members come and go. So really, really good to get them into the database rather than changing HTML. So we'll have a team model as well. What else? Maybe frequently asked questions would be handy. So you can keep adding. What you want to do is prevent the need for the customer to keep on coming back to the developer to change things and alter things in the HTML. It's it's just slow and clunky and you've got to do rebuilds and things like that. Instead, if we build a database table and make a responsive website, the user can self-serve. So they can access the admin page, add a team member, deactivate one, happy days, all is good. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to create a file in here and we're going to call this, hang on, other file. There we go, right, again, models, start with contact. So new file. We're going to have a contact form in the website. So that contact form, when somebody uses it, it'll put an entry into the database, and that way we have a record of it, who it was, when it was, and you can track when we get back to them and do some analytics on that. So we'll have a contact model. Okay, so I'm just going to look at my other screen here just to make sure that we're all good. So first things first, from Django.db import models. That's what we'll be using to, that's the application in Django that allows us to create the models, and we have access to the fields, we have access to so foreign keys and integer fields and float fields and things like that, but also we can, got access to functions such as what to do with a foreign key when a linked object is deleted, such as cascade or set null. Okay, so that's the main models app in Django that we'll be using. What else do we want? Let's go ahead and create a class. So class, contact, and models.model. Okay. Let's add some bits. Right, okay, let's get a class in here. Meta. Posse name, plural. Is that right? Equals, yeah, there we go. So email contacts. Call it contact of our website. That's how it's going to be rendered in the admin page. Okay. So what we're going to do, I'm going to save that quickly. I'm not going to do any migrations because one of the things that I like to do, especially in a production type app, rather than these tutorials, when we create a model instance, it will you have an ID field and a PK field, a primary key field in the database. And if you don't set it to a UUID, it will default just to an integer, which is fine. But I like to use UUIDs, and we're going to use that same concept on all models. So it stands to reason that we'll probably be better off creating a class to inherit from that will have the UUID. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's add a directory in here called utils. In there, we'll have a constructor. Okay, and in here we will have, how have we done it in here? Utils. Just copy it across. Right, so we're going to have one in here, new file. I'm going to call it model.py. And I will paste this. Do apologize, but be here forever otherwise. So from Django.db import models, okay, and again this one's going to be called model, and it's going to inherit from models.model. So okay, that's the same what we were doing for the contact class. We will use this in every DB entry. So ID field is going to be in models.uuid field. Okay, ID, the primary key is true. Default is uuid.uuid4. Okay, so we're not going to have, you can tell I've copy pasted this, it's absolutely fine. So essentially, especially in production, I normally add on the verbosity, the translation. So you use the underscore and it will translate the name. It's not essential. I mean, it's not the end of the world at all. But I'll keep it in there, saves messing around. So now we've got access to a model called model that will inherit in all of our models that we now create, which will have an ID field, which is actually a UUID. class meta abstract equals true. That means that we can now inherit from this model. So we'll go ahead and do that. So how do we do it? Go to models from Django. We still need to import models, but now we can say from utils dot model import model. Okay, and now if I use model instead of models.model, it will be a UUID instead of an ID. Another thing that I like to use is something called Django extensions. Let's go ahead and have a look. Because Django extensions gives us access to a whole bunch of stuff. It gives us access to a load of abstract fields for our models, such as an activator model that we can inherit from, and it will give us a status of inactive, active, which is really, really helpful. You have managers that allow us to then call that model, so it'll be contact.objects.active, and that will filter out all of the inactive instances, which is really good for query sets. So what we'll do, we'll pip install Django extensions. Yeah, go back in here, don't want to break the server. Pip install, did you see that? You probably did. Okay, and then we will, oh, it's not liking that. So pip freeze requirements base.txt. That should have worked. Right, okay, let me CLS. And what we need to do is go back into our preschool, go to conf, go to common, and we now need to add, I think it's called Django underscore extensions. Let's have a look. Just double check. I think that's what we need to do. Yeah, there you go. Happy days. And that will now be accessible, but we remember we need to go Python manage. You might not need to do this, but let's do it anyway. Make, oh, we're not. Forget that. We're not going to do that. Close save. Let's go back in the core, go to models, and go contact. And now what we can do is we can say from Django extensions. Models import activator models. No, it's not. Let's have a look. There's some docs here. I've read the docs before. Read the docs. There we go. Model extensions, there we go. Right, okay, so we've got an activator model. So there we go, that's what we want. Django extensions.db.models. So these are the abstract models that they have. So you have activator model. You have a timestamp model as well. So if you look at the docs, this will give us access to the activator model, will give us access to a status, activation date, and a deactivation date field in our database. Can you see that okay? Probably not, there you go. And then we have a timestamped model, will give us a created date time field and a modified date time field as well. You've got other things as well, such as you've got a title slug description model. Really, really good if you're using slug fields, things like blogs. So we will use that actually when we create a blog object or blog model. So let's add them first. So activator model, timestamp model. And then what we can have in here is, so what do we want? We want from a contact, we want to collect their name, their email, number, and a message probably. Let's go with that. So we need name, char field. There we go. I think you need to have a keyword argument called max length, and we'll have that as 255. We won't put blank null. That's fine. So name email equals models dot email field, max length 255. Telephone number, just telephone will do. Telephone equals models dots. We'll have that as a char field as well. Max length, but that's 20. And then we'll have message equals models. We'll have that as text field. I don't think you need a max length on text field, although we will have one max length. So that's 1,000. I think that's it. Let's go ahead and make migrations. Ah, right, no, that's why. Okay, sorry. What we need to do is go in the constructor from core.models import contact. And then in here, we then need contact. That's it. So I didn't have it in my init file. So Django's saying you haven't got anything to migrate. But now we've added that, it will. But it's saying cannot import name contact from partially initialized module core.models. Most likely due to a circular import. Import. Models dot contact import contact. That's a good one. You're going to get a lot of this. See this. There we go. Right. So it's created a migration file. If we go to migrations now, it'll be in there. So what is it doing? It's creating this class migration. And this Django builds this straight out of the box, right? So you don't have to do anything with it. So although we've only got the name, email, telephone, and message field, by adding those inherited classes, we have ID, which is now a UUID field, which is great. We have a created, modified status, activated date, deactivated date. So a couple of lines of code, we get a whole bunch of fields, and they're all set up lovely jubbly in the database, which is what we want. Python manage.py migrate will commit it to the database. Okay, now if what we do is create a new directory in here called admin, new file, which is init.py. What I'll do, I'm going to copy all of that across to admin and just change it to admin. Save that, but then in here, add a file called contact.py. Oh, don't want that. Okay. And then in contact, what we'll do, we will add this little bit of code. So from Django.contrib import admin, core.models.contact import contact, which we just created. And for this admin we can use it as a decorator, right? So admin.register, we can register the contact model, and then we wrap up this class with that decorator. So it's contact admin, admin.model admin, which is pretty standard when you're registering an admin, a model to admin. This is kind of how you do it. And then we have a list display. So we're going to have ID, name, message, email. We could have telephone as well. Okay, and that should now like that. Yeah, the reason that was sounding a bit of a barney is because contact wasn't in there. But now that is registered. So, provided our server is still running, which it is, we update this page. That a bit better? There you go. That is not showing in contacts. I know why. Okay, so we've created this admin directory, right? Happy days. But what we haven't done is deleted. Where is it? 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 We haven't deleted this one. Okay, so now Django's having a bit of a Barney. It doesn't know which one to look for. Oh, come on, that should be in there. Core app. Let me have a look. There's something I've done wrong here. Contact, models, admin, init file, contact admin. That's what I was doing wrong. So I was passing through the contact model, not the contact admin class, which is what we wanted. Oh, I'm having a right Barney here. 1 second. Yeah, the reason that didn't work is because the I needed to stop the server and restart the server for some reason. So now we've got the core app included in our Django admin, and you remember we had the verbosity name plural. It says contact via website. Okay, we haven't got any. Okay, but what we do, we'll just create one. Name. There we go. Okay, and we've got a message test, right? So if I now save this, you can see the ID is this. If we didn't have the UUID, it'd just be 1 and 2 and 3, which is not ideal really. So yeah, this is what, when somebody uses the contact form on the website, this is what we're looking to see. Okay, so that is contacts. Let's go back in to our app here. What else do we need to create? We need to create a policy. So rather than retyping everything out, look, let's go policy. I'm going to call this policy. And we're going to say, call this policies. Now on this one, what we want is, so again, trying to sort of support what we were saying earlier about self-serving. Policies, we want them to be displayed more than just a paragraph. We need headings and paragraphs. And this can be facilitated with something called a rich text editor. Now what I normally use is CK editor. So we'll get that installed and we'll create a rich text editor field instead of something like a text field, a models.text field. So let's go ahead and do that. Rich text editor, rich text. No, that is not what we want. We want, so it's CK, it could be CK editor. Yes, that's the one. Okay, back into the project. Back in here, we'll go pip install. Oh, we could just dump it in there. CK editor, Django CK editor. And have we got the pip freeze command here somewhere? There we go. Right, so if we go back in the requirements, look in base, you can see now we've got Django CK editor there. Go into the docs, it tells you how to install it. So CK editor, we need a base class. No, we don't need any of that. So we need CK editor in our stored apps. So we'll go ahead and add that. Cool, preschool common. Add that in here. Great. What else do we need? Run collect static. This will copy static CK editor requirements over to static root. We won't run the collect static command just yet, but we do need to add some bits to the URL conf, so we'll go ahead and do that. Admin, let's look at my other screen. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Looks like that's it. So we will go ahead and add a rich text field to this model. Contacts, no, we won't. It will go into, so bear with me. Right, so we have got this here. That's what I was looking for. Core, go back into models, going back into policy. So we've now got access because we've got CK editor, dot fields, we've got a rich text field here. So we will have the title slug description model. We'll also have no, we won't inherit the rich text. So this will give us a title, a description, and it'll also give us a slug field, which for a policy is bang on, but the description field is just a text field. So I won't use that, but it's defaults to blank equals true and null equals true. So you don't need to use the description field, but the title field you do, which means it will be, so the privacy policy will be accessible with localhost 8000 / policy / policy as the slug, which is what we want. So we've got a title, so we don't need the name. We've got the activator, we've got the creation date and all that kind of stuff. So really all we need is the call it body, and I think you just add it like that. Yeah, that's it. You just have a rich text field. You don't need anything else other than that. Okay, body. So that's your policies. Do exactly the same for blog. Okay, exactly what we're doing is we're changing this to blog. Blogs. What else do we need? So we've got a contact form, policies, we've got blog. What else do we need? Team. So for team, we're going to want names, which can be title, description of the person. We need an image. We can add the images later. Yeah, let's do it based on this. Team members. I don't think we need a rich text on that, so we won't have one. Okay, what we now need to do is bring them all in. Okay, so we can have blog, policy, team. I've forgotten events, haven't I? Team, blog, policy, team, blog. Oh, there we go. Yeah, blog, team. But remember, I forgot the event. So let's copy that, rename, call that event, call that event. Our events, there we go. And we'll just add, all I'm doing is adding it to the constructor. Event, and lastly, drop it in there. You won't regret setting your project up like this. I mean, it's sometimes a little bit of a pain in the ass, but when you get used to it, I think it's just a lot cleaner and easier to understand. So let's go ahead and make those migrations. I've already written it in here somewhere. There you go. Make migrations. Where is it? Great. There we go. Cool. So if we go back into the browser, look back in here, we haven't got it in there. Of course it's not in there because we haven't added it to admin. So we need to go ahead and do that. Contact, what we'll do, call this rename team. Team. That's what I like about text editors. You haven't got to do all the typing. It kind of knows what you're trying to do. Call this team register. Register team admin. So I'll have ID, title. That'll do. All of the objects I've just created, all the models I've just created, have all got an ID and a title. So we can quite literally now copy team. We can call this one blog. Obviously, we need to then change this to blog, and blog. Rename to event. Events. There we go. And what was the other one? My memory's terrible. Blog contact event policy. There you go. Policy. Change that. Policy. They've all got titles, which is all cool. Right, so now we need to just bring them into the constructor here. Oh no, we don't want contact, we want event. Policy and team. Lastly, we want blog admin, event admin, policy admin, team admin. Great. So we now make sure that the server has reset itself, because it won't show up otherwise. It should do. There we go. Cool. So we now got them all in there. So we've got blogs, contacts, our events, policies, and team member. If we go to policy and just open it up, we should have a rich text editor, which is what we want. This is a text field. This is a rich text editor, which means we get access to things like bold, right? So you can then turn it off. It's sort of, you know, Word document, Google Doc type thing. Got styles, italic, all sorts of stuff. And that is providing you the safe filter in a template that will render exactly like that in a template, which is really, really helpful. So title, let's call this privacy policy. And what Django will do, it will snake case that. So it will be privacy dash policy, all under, all lowercase, and that will become a slug for the URL, which is really, really helpful. Save. There we go, privacy policy. So when we go to the right URL, it'll be good. Right, so that's our models. It's all wired up to admin. So now what we need to do is create the views and then wire up the URLs, okay? Right, okay, so my other laptop's dinging away. So, okay, done the models, done the admin. Let's go ahead and look at some views. Okay, so what we want to do, again, like the models and admin. So now if we minimize them, I've got a views file. But in keeping with the rest of the project, let's go ahead and create a directory called views. Within that, we will have a constructor file. And we need a view for each of the models. We need a few, right? So let's go ahead. We want a home page. Let's go ahead and wire that up. Oh, we don't want a new folder. I don't know what I'm doing there, right? So new file. We'll call this home.py. We're going to have a home page, or could call it index. We will have an about us page. We will have a rename. We'll have a policies page. So that will be a list view. Rename. We'll have a policy page. So we'll be using the generic views built into Django, which means you can get a whole lot of functionality with only a few lines of code. I love them. We want a contact page, probably an events page, rename, which will be lists. Event page, which will be a detail page. Blogs page, and a blog page. I think that's it. There might be some other bits and pieces, but basically they are the URLs we're going to be wiring up. Okay, so let's start with the home page. Home, and again, I know I said I'm going to do a lot of typing, but it's not good. My typing's really, really poor. Use. So I've got a home page here. So let's go and wire up this. So from the import, we want to import from Django. Django has a whole bunch of generic views. Let me show you what they are. I've got a virtual environment. I can show you quickly. So go VE and V, go into lib, go into Django. You then go into their views directory, which is what we're importing from. Go into generic. You then have a whole bunch of bits and pieces. If you go into init, the instantiator file, or constructor file, we have what we got here. Is that the right one we want to look at? Base. Context. That's where we got view. We got find detail view. There we go, detail view. So okay, so it's important detail view. From detail, right? Okay, sorry, I should have probably just seen that. Oh, okay, detail. That's a single object. This is the base detail view, but what we importing, or what we will import, is this one here. So that's the detail view. So it'd be we inherit in the class-based view will be inheriting generic.detail view or generic view, or sorry, template view. So there's a whole bunch of views, but I'll go through each of them with you now. So generic. Let's copy this across. Where are we? So class home view generic.template view, which gives us a get, request, context, get template. There's a whole bunch of methods that we inherit from now. But what you do need to put in the template view is where the template lives. We haven't created this. We will in a second, but we need to create a directory called core in our templates directory and a file in there called index. So we'll go ahead and do that so that the home view will work. But before we do that, let's add in here from core.views .home import home view. The list home view. We now need to wire up that view into our URL. So make sure I've got this all right before I make another mistake. So it will be path. This is our home view, so there is no kind of, it's not a slash about or anything like that. So this will be localhost 8000. So we're already importing views, as you can see on line 2. On home view, it's a class-based view, so we need to say as view. And then we put name equals, call this home. Now we can reference this in URL tags. So in a template, it would be URL core home. That's essentially what this is. That's how we reference this URL by name in the templates. Okay, that URL will now work, but it will come up with an error. Let me just show you. It will come up with an error because I can't find a template. Let's see if this is all working well. Template does not exist. Is that not even showing? There we go. That's what I was looking for. So this is what Django has. I mean, it looks a little bit scary, but actually it gives you a whole bunch of information that helps you debug stuff. Straight at the top, template does not exist. It cannot find a template to render. So let's go ahead and make that. So go to templates, new folder, call this core. And within core, we will add a new file called index.html. And we will just have a h1 tag, hello, did coding. Now, that won't like it because whenever you mess around with templates, Django takes a second or two to do anything, so you can crash out your run server, run it again, and give it another kick. There we go. Hello, did coding. Happy days, it works. It's found a template, this is all good. So before we start wiring up the front end completely, let's go ahead and just wire up the other views quickly. Close all these down. I have a habit of doing that. So that's the, we'll delete that. Don't need that anymore. Views, we've got the home view. Copy that. Let's have the about view. The about is a template view as well. This will be called about. Call about. What else have we got? Contact, that'll be a form view. Policies. Okay, right, so let's go and do the policies view then. So we also now need to import, we've imported generic, now we need to import the model policy, okay? And then we can just use this. Okay, so class-based view, generic, list view. So a list view, Django will, so that view comes with a get, it's got a get context data, it's got a get query set. So the get query set will be based on the pagination. So we're saying that in a list view, find, based on the get query set, show the first 10 results. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to overwrite the query set because we need to add things like the activator model. So we don't want to show policies that are inactive. Otherwise, it would just be a generic show the first 10, then the next 10 in the pagination. So what we can do is we can use this. Okay, so that doesn't like that because of my tab. Doesn't like that because of my tab. Do you know what? Here we go. Having all sorts of fun. Okay, so self model. So the model is the policy. Objects, active. Remember Django extensions? We have access to active in the objects, so in the manager of the object. So that will filter out all inactive policies. We want to order by the creation date of the policy. So we want, in this case, it's descending. So it'll be oldest to newest. Descending. No, it'll be newest to oldest. Okay. So the query set will now be the newest to oldest policies that are active. That's what we're trying to do. Everything else, we don't need anything else in there. That's all good. So we want that for all of the views that have lists. So we want events. Call this events view. So that's events page, event, call that events. A lot of repetition here, but say it's a lot of repetition. It's minimal code here, but a lot of the views are very, very similar. Now you could spend the time doing like a class that you can then inherit from, but we won't do that. Blogs. So we want blog. Make sure we got the blog. Is that right? Because all of these models have an activator model, it works really, really well. Okay, so we've got blogs, got policies, got events. I think that's that. We now need a detail view. Okay, so let's do blog first. In blog, let's make sure doing the right thing here. Blog. Happy days, right. So this is the detail view for the blog from core blog, so it'll point to the right thing, and we're also looking at core blog. So that tells the view where to find the template. We don't need pagination in this because it's bringing back one. Now by default, Django in the detail view will be looking at the ID, but we're passing through a slug. So we need to change the method get object. Okay, so we will dump this in here. So this is the get object method that we're inheriting from. We're now changing it. So rather than get the object by its ID, we're saying now get it from the slug, and we will pass through the slug in the URL. So we need to make sure that we do that in the URL when we configure it. But that's it. That's all we need to do. We'll do that for event, because event is also a detail page, right? Change them quickly. Get the case right. There we go. Happy days. And also do it for policy, which is also another detail page. I'm doing Control H to find replace, which is really helpful. Make sure you get your capitals right. There we go. So now we've got about, done, blog, blogs. We haven't got contacts yet. We've done events, event, home, policies, policy. Just contact left. So the contact will be a form view. Now, I want to just make sure I do this right, because I don't want to complicate it. What we do first is a form. So let's do that view. Now we'll do it now because we're looking at views. So let's add a folder called forms. So a form in Django handles all of the logic for posting data to a view. You have things like validation in there. You know, if valid, then it will do something. You can add methods to the form so that you can really handle it in a view. So a lot of the logic occurs in a form rather than a view. So you can just say if post, do something, if whatever. So let's go ahead and create a new file called contact. So it'll be from.forms.contact import contact form, just so I don't forget to do it. From.forms. Contact form. We don't have that yet. We will have, oh, hang on, I'm putting that in the wrong file. There we go. Copy. There we go. We don't want that. So let's go ahead and build this. What we got? Contacts. Forms, contact. So from Django, import forms. Okay, we're going to need that. In the same way we have Django DB models, model forms is the app that handles all the form logic. So what have we got? What have we got? So we want to bring in a contact model because this will be a model form. And then we're going to create the form itself. I've done it very differently in this, but we're cool. This form probably won't work because the project I'm copying this from uses Ajax. We're not going to be doing Ajax submissions in this. So what have we got? We've got a message. So we now need a field for each of the main model fields. So we've got name, phone, email, and message. So we need a field for each. Let's start with message just because I've got it handy. So message field so we're kind of linking the field in the form to the field in the model. That's what we're trying to do. So forms.char field. So this is 1,000. If you remember, we set it to 1,000 in the model. Required false. I'm going to put that as true because we want a message each time. That's why you're sending us a message. Then widgets, forms, text area. So this is what renders the design in a web page. Okay. We'll also have a class meta before we do the others. This is where you point it to the contact model. And the fields that we're going to have. We're not going to have all the fields because there's a whole bunch of fields in there we don't need. Telephone, I think. I called it telephone. Look in the models, contact. It is, it's called telephone. Okay. So now we need some other fields. So I'm just going to fetch them from my other screen. What we've got? We've got an email field here. Okay, yeah, cool, get that. Saves me typing it out. So yeah, it's an email. So 254, that's the same as the model. This is an email input. Placeholder is email now. These are the attributes in HTML that we're going to add to the input to make sure that the input is exactly what we need it to be. We then have a name, I believe, name field. There we go. I've got that here as 60, but I think I changed it in there. Did I change it in models? I did, 254. Actually, email is 255. Both of them are. So let's just do that quickly. So email is, I think that needs to be true. So we'll have them all as true. And lastly, we've got telephone as well. Yeah, well, this here will be called telephone. Although in here it's called phone number. So telephone required, that can be false. Phone number off, or complete off. That's that. That's the form done. Okay, so we created some fields. You wouldn't necessarily need to construct these. It would default in Django to probably the correct one. But this allows us to add things like the class. So it'll be the form control, which is quite handy. If in the template you purchase from ThemeForest or another company, you might have specific classes that you can add in this form as well, which is really, really helpful. Why not working? So that's why, so I didn't need the contact form. There we go. Form is now there available, and we can add that to our view that we're now going to mess around with, which is contact. So add to contact view. We'll import generic again once more. We want to say from core.models import contact. That's the model we're going to be linking it to. We want the form. Form we just created, and then we want, I'll make sure I haven't got any hangover stuff. Don't worry about that. Right, so forget that reCAPTCHA mix in. We're not going to use reCAPTCHA just yet. I'll mess around with that later, probably outside of this video. But this is a form view. Okay, so for our contact page, core contact, contact form, success URL. You need to have the success URL. This is where, because we're not going to be using Ajax in this form submission, that is where the user will be redirected to when they submit a successful form. So that's it. That's all I need in the form view. So they are all good. We need them in the init file. Right, okay. Do you know, I'm going to pause it and get these in here. Okay, right. So you don't really need to see that. I've added a whole bunch of them here. Oh, it looks like I haven't got policy in there. I've got policy view. There we go. Right, okay, so that's just a lot of repetitive stuff. You didn't really need to see me do it. So create the views. You can see I've also created this team view as well. I forgot about that. And then I've gone ahead and I've added them all into my init file there, Dunder init file. So they're now accessible in the URLs. And we can go ahead and create these paths. So let me consult my other projects. I think we do this. We go about with a backslash, call it the about view, but it won't like it because we haven't got a comma there. Okay, so, and call it about. Yep. Always have the comma, the trailing comma. What have we got then? We've got about, we've got contacts. We've got the blogs view, blogs. Sorry. Right, see what I'm doing here. I'll get all of the list views here. So that would be events. Oh, events. We've also got team. Events view, team view. What else have we got? We've got the policies view as well, right? Policies view, and policies. Right, they're all the list views. So now I want to do a detail view. Now, the reason we need to pay special attention to this is because it's a detail view. So we need to pass through a slug. Okay, and I can never remember the syntax for this, so I'm going to look on here. You do this. Okay, so it's a string that's been passed through, and the name is slug. Okay, and this is what we're looking for in the view. So if we look in blog, what we're looking for is the slug that's been passed through. So it's called slug. Okay, so slug equals slug. That's how it's working, right? So detail view is expecting a keyword. Though it's not in here, which is where you normally put it in the init file, init method, and pass it through as a keyword, but it's already expecting it. So we're expecting a slug to be passed, and that is how we do it. So we'll do the detail views for each of these. Sorry, let's go ahead and do that. Events, team. Oh no, we don't have a team. We're not having an individual team page, but we will have a policy page. Log view. Oh no, sorry, events. Policy view. Event and policy. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for now. So the URLs work, albeit if I try to, it's not liking that. So if you look at my terminal, I just noticed my terminal's crashed. So let's run it again. Oh, it's not liking that. So from forms.contact, import contact form. Well, contact form. What have I called it then? Oh my bad. Just realised what I did. It's not from forms. It's from core.forms. So you'll get a lot of that. Even I do. So again, this should now work. If I go to /about, the URL will be picked up, but it won't be able to find a template. There you go, because we haven't got it. So what we need to do, I'm going to avoid creating a whole bunch of templates right now, because at the end of the day, we need to do a whole bunch of stuff to that. So I think if there's anything else I need to do in the back end for now, I don't think there is. I think that is basically it for the back end for now. Let's wire up the front end, shall we? Okay, templates. So in templates, let's have a new folder, call this base. Okay, and within base, we will have a new file called base.html. What we're going to do is we're going to copy the index page from the front end template and drop it into base. And we're going to carve it up and use template tags such as include, blocks, and things like that. So show you what I'm going to do. So we find index, Control A, Control C, drop that in base. Okay, base isn't being used in any of the templates. Don't worry about that. What we'll then do is we'll keep index in there for now. Yeah, we will. And we will also copy over. No, we won't. We're going to keep, we'll look at base. Right, so what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do in Django templating, first line above this doc type, we want to always load static. That gives us access to the static files being served to the site, which is really, really important, because we need to find the static files, right? So for instance, if I just copy all of this, dump that into index, and then have a look at, doesn't like that. Keep an eye, if you're always worrying what's going on, have a look at your terminal, because if the server's crashed out, you're going to have all sorts of problems. So I'll just kick that again. So I now go back into home. It's going to come up with a Barney, right? So it's looking at the index HTML, but it just doesn't do anything, because if you go into the inspect panel and look in console, it's not loading anything. It's not loading any resources. 404 can't find, because Django can't find the static files. So we need to change that. And there's a really, really easy way of doing it. Go back in here, go into base. First and foremost, if you remember, in static, we added this assets file, okay? So it's looking for the right file. It's just we now need to point it to the assets file in our static directory. So what I do is I highlight this area here, Control H in VS Code. And what you want to do is change it to quote, curly brackets, percentage, static, because we're loading static, and then single quote, and we want to then put, because we're changing assets, so we now want to put it again. So all of a sudden, we're just changing the syntax of the current import href. So assets, and then /. So we're changing that to this. It's 104 occurrences. Bang. Then we look for .css, single quote, percentage, squiggly brackets, double quote. Okay. So what we're doing, this has just changed. So what was assets/css bootstrap min CSS is now Django ready type syntax. Now I do know that there's going to be JavaScript. So if you look for JavaScript, it appears 8 times. Change that to JS. Look, we've already changed all this funky bit at the front. Probably going to be a bunch of PNGs. There we go, there's 82 of them. What about JPEG, JPG? There we go, there's 3 of them. And SVG? No. MP4? Well, we're probably right. Okay, so we're probably good to go now. So what have we got? Title. preschool. What have we got? What have we got? So this is HTML. This is the head section, right? So we'll be adding some bits and pieces to this, but this is all the CSS that it needs to load to render the index page that we want to see on the screen. So we're loading the CSS correctly. It's looking for a favicon, which is a PNG file. So we'll change that to something that we want. We've got a preloader, which is pretty normal stuff. Then what we've got is a header. Look, we've got a login model. Okay, fine. We'll leave that as it is. We've got a search box. So just have a little look at the actual template to see what's going on. Childcare slider, feature section. Do you know what? I'm going to copy all of that to index and see if I can sort of work out what's going on. Should spring into life. There we go. There's the loader. Okay, happy days. This is the page we're going to be loading, right? So it is a preschool. This is a template, preschool template, which is really handy. It means we haven't got to do much design work. So if we go into inspect, all of these sections have got like different elements, right? So this here, for instance, click on that. Where are we? That's part of the header. Okay, so click on this bit here, or so where are we? Where are we? Click on this bit. That's this part here. Okay, so it looks like we're looking for everything other childcare slider. Okay, so the childcare slider is this bit here, and then we've got everything underneath. So that then becomes the index page. Everything above that is the head, the navigation, the loader, and things like that. The footer is underneath it. So where are we? We've got the loader. We've got da, 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 da. So this childcare slider. I'm going to call this content. And end block. Okay, so that means we can now pick up all of this. Minimize it, it'll be a lot easier. Minimize, you've got features, these are all little sections, that's all it is, program section. Let's keep minimizing until we find something that resembles a footer. Members, logo section, yeah, okay, section, block 2. There we go, footer section. So we don't want any of that in the base HTML. We want to copy that, we're going to drag that, I'm going to bang that in there. So that's now our home. What we want to do, the first template tag we want in here is extends. This is base /base.html. Okay, so the base is kind of the scaffold with all the CSS and JavaScript, and then what we do is just have all of the page specific elements encapsulated within blocks. So if you remember, this was all a block called content. So you can call this block content. And at the bottom, end block. So what that'll do, that will then spit that whole block into the extend HTML. Does that make sense? So this base no longer has any of that gumph in there. And then we've got a footer bottom. It's got a date in there. We can do better than that. We can go now. So that'll be, if it flicks around to the 1st of January 2024, guess what? That'll change. This is the company that made the actual template, which is good. Leave it in there for now. It's no drama. Save. I think that's that. See if that works. Static. What I haven't done. So what that's saying is, look, you're using the word static. Can't find that. So it's because we haven't loaded it. There we go. Happy days. That's exactly what we want. If you go back into inspect and go into console, you see here the console's completely, everything's being loaded. It's unusual for it to be completely blank like that, but well, that's exactly where we want it to be. Okay, so what do we do now? Okay, so we have created index. So we'll copy and paste, rename and call this about. The key now is to go back to this, go to the about. We want to hide the head. We want to hide everything. Don't want the models. Don't want the search. The all page banner, that's exactly what we want. So we want that to the footer. So it's a little bit tedious, but I mean, you can knock up a page very, very quickly. So we don't want a model, so we want that. So copy all of that, dump that now into the new About Us page in this section. There we go, dump. Obviously I could do Control A, but I need all my blocks. So there we go. I have another one called rename contact. Go into the contact page, this one here. There's a good reason why we selected this template, because it's very, very good. It's exactly what we needed. So class, all page banner, yeah, contact us form, get in touch, happy days, and then the footer, that's a smaller page. Copy, go into contact, see what I'm doing here. So if I now, so essentially, if I now go into the About Us page and the Contact Us page, it should be rendering stuff. So I don't need to change everything. Well, actually, that's a lie, because we've now got, we've added these. So we've added dodgy hrefs again. So there'll be a whole bunch of errors. But the good thing about VS Code is you can individually go into the pages. If you go Control H, it will remember what you've changed. So we're going to assets, find the one that you changed it to, place it all. There won't be any CSSs, but there will be PNGs. There we go. Change them all. JPEG was just one under. Bang on. Save. Go into the contact page. So there we go. Right, that should do it. Save. I'll go back into the browser. If I now go into /about. There's the About Us page. That looks fine. Go into the inspect panel. Console. No errors. Contacts. Happy days, no errors. That's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm just going to repeat that process with all of the other pages that I've selected as the correct ones for this website, and I'll come back to you. Okay, I've gone ahead and done that. I have also added a new model called services or service, because one of the templates, I forgot about that. I needed a way for the customer to add services into the database that they render into a services list view. So yeah, I've gone ahead and done that. So I created the model, added it to admin, created a new view, added a URL, and now created the template. And I've gone through and I've added all of these templates here. I've changed all the assets paths to point to static. So yeah, we can now go ahead and have a look at them. So what have we got? So blog. Oh no, so it's blogs. So it's saying that it can't be found because there is no path. So the only blog that we've got is the one with a slug. And unless you pass a slug, it won't like it. So can't resolve keyword creation date. Well, that's interesting. What is the field called? So what do we call this? Bobby, and let me sign in. So our services. Creation date. What is the field called? Let's have a look. So if remember, we installed Django extensions and we added a model extension, but it's saying we're looking for, where's the timestamp model? The timestamp, so it's created. So I've actually called it something different here. So quite rightly, it's saying that in blogs, it's looking for creation date, right? So what we want to do is go find in folder, wherever we find creation date, replace it with created. It's found it 5 times. No need to save. There we go. And it likes it now. Okay, you can see in the inspection panel, there's nothing going on in there. So this is the blogs page. We have services. It will look exactly the same. So I'm using service. Well, I'll change that to services. Let's call it what it is. So we want to call this in URLs. There we go, services. That's the services page, so it looks a little bit different. It still looks pretty cool. We've got team. The team page. Happy days. Okay, so what else have we got? Blog. I think that's it on contact us page. What's that look like? That's the contact us file. We'll wire this up in a little while. But for now, let's go ahead and change some of the logic in the templates. So let me close some of these, close saved, minimize some of these. Okay, so let's just double check what's going on in here. We have got models and search boxes. We're not going to worry about any of those just yet. Let's go ahead. I'm going to change this to didcoding.com. Did coding. Did coding. That's the footer bottom, footer section. So about us, what else have we got in here? So we've got some, what's it look like in the browser? Let's look at the footer, okay? So what we've just changed is at the bottom here, it's 2023, and that will now say didcoding.com when I refresh the browser. There you go, didcoding, brilliant. That will take us to the top of the screen. So everything's working as expected. It's just these here will have to have links in. Remember I said about the context processor earlier on? Let's go ahead and change one of those. Preschool context processor. So if I go in here and add my Facebook, HTTPS facebook.com. Okay, we can also have my Twitter, HTTPS twitter.com. You get the drift, right? So there you go. What we can do is we can add Facebook logo. So now the href will be, if you use the double squiggly wiggly brackets, you can say my Facebook. This is Twitter. My Twitter. Okay, we could go through and do the Instagram and everything as well, but we won't bother just now. Okay, so now we've got some navigation. So if we save that, go back. At the minute, there's no H. You see that at the bottom left? You probably can't because of the blue border. But it's currently, it's not giving me a Facebook link. So if I now refresh, oh, that's interesting. What's going on here? Invalid syntax, context processor line 7. So one comma. Okay, never forget your trailing commas. That needs a kick. Give it a kick. Give it a refresh. There we go. We've now got, you put that on there, that's saying HTTPS, believe me it is, it's saying if I click it, there you go, it takes to Facebook, happy days. And that's a Twitter, take us to Twitter. Okay, so we get that. That context variable is being passed through to every single. Interesting enough, our debug toolbar isn't. It's a problem for another time. So we've now got some quick links. Okay, so this is the navigation. We go back into the footer. Quick links about. So the about HTML, well, we know we can change that across every page. So we go to templates, find in folder, but about HTML. What we can do is just change it in everything at once to use the URL template tag. And we want to call this core, semicolon, about. Change it in everything. Place. Now we've got team. Well, team HTML. What that relates to is core team. Place it everywhere. One that you will definitely want to change is home. That would appear in a lot, I would have said. Or is it index? It might have been index. Yeah, index HTML. You want to call that home. Place services. Services. Event. Actually, their event page is our events page. So let's change that to events. What else have we got? That'll do for now. Right, okay, hopefully that'll work. There we go. So if we hover over this now, that'll take us to the About Us page, okay? Same goes for any other navigation on the site. Our team, take us to the team page. We go in here and click on team, that'll work because I changed everything across all the templates. Okay, so now we can start getting a little bit more cute and everything. So let's change the context processor. We've got my email already. So we go back in here, go into templates, go into base, because that'll have all of our navigation. Go into header probably. We'll have, right, so, oh, we don't really, do we really need to? Ooh. Right, I'm not going to have a clock in there. I mean, you can pass through a clock, brilliant, but we're not. My telephone. Add that to that. Font awesome. I was using phone for email, but it probably should be FA email, but we'll see. We'll see how that pans out when we have a look at the browser. My email. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to go through the page now and just sort of change a few things. So emails come through, but I don't think in have we got the phone or we haven't. Right, so my telephone. Okay, obviously that will be in production, it'll be a different number. There we go, phone, telephone. We've then got these here. So let's go ahead and change those. You get the drift, but if I go my Facebook, now what the other ones we are going to hide for now, or we're not going to be popping up any kind of model anytime soon. This is the nav bar now, right? So, okay, so that's taking us to Facebook. So this top bar now is done. Homepage, well, we don't want that as a drop down. We just want that as home. So what is there? Context. Oh no, that's the logo. Sorry, that's the logo. What is this? Start navigation. So this is for the menu for mobile device, menu for desktop device. So that's the logo there. You then have the home, nav item, drop down toggle. Right, so we want it to show active if, so if is it request dot path equals so what are we doing there? That might work. We'll have a look. So we don't want this drop down. We just want it to be a navigation link rather than a drop down menu. See if that worked. It should. Oh, I've removed the navigation. Sorry, my bad. For home. I'll go home. Shit, there we go. That works. So we're saying that if the path in the request is home, then mark as active. If not, it doesn't. Okay, so we need something similar in the About Us page. Where is it? So we can go here, pick all of that up, and we can call this About. Or would it be about? We'll have a look, see how it pans out, shall we? Never remember. No, it's not. Maybe it's, you could say if about in request path. That way we're not looking at backslashes or anything like that. So that's probably the better way of doing it. There we go, that now works. So we go back in home, that's not, but that is. So it's just a case of going through the template and trying to wire it up to work. Because there's all these funky CSS and different logos and different images and icons. And it's just trying to wire it up so that, you know, it works with your URL configuration and things like that. So we can do the same for team because that's not a drop down. And I'll probably just go about and hide some of these other bits. You got the pricing page. You do actually want a pricing page, come to think of it. But we'll do that in a second. So this will be team, and team, blog. Okay, is this all looking good so far, right? So we can hide pricing. We won't worry about that for now. But the blog we do want to worry about. Do you know what? We will change that to a normal navigation rather than a drop down. See, this will now, because we've got blog in request path, it doesn't matter if it says blog or blog, so it will still mark it as active. Blog. Don't want that in there now. I have a tendency to hide things rather than, comment them out rather than removing them. It's really helpful. So this would be contacts. Oh. Contact, and call this contact. There we go. Right. Look at the quote button. I will worry about that in a little while. So now it will work. All of this will work. What's the search button do? Okay, that's cool, but I don't want that for now. So we will with the search thing. That's the body. That's the header. That's the search thing there. Now what? We don't even want the model. Okay, the get a quote should probably pop a model up. It doesn't work. Now we need to dot search. We need to remove the dot search. Find dot search. So there's that one there. Do you know what? We'll also remove the get quote for now. Are we getting somewhere? Yes, we are. Okay. Then we've got the standard header. I think, what's this little element called? So this is pretty unique. This is pretty standard across all sections. So we've got one here. We can probably, no, it's all changed, so we won't change any of that. We need to go through and change the content, but we're not going to worry about that just yet, right? So what we will do, however, is we will look at one of the blogs. We'll change how these are rendered, because at the minute these are not coming from the database at all. Do you know what we might, yeah, do you know what we will do? Admin, blogs, add a blog, title, demo. This is a demo blog. We'll make that bold and italic, and there we go. And then we'll say demo 2. This is demo 2. Okay, save and save. So we've got 2 in the database, right? Now what we'll do is we'll go back here. Remember, this is a list view, so we can go ahead and work out where the repetitive stuff is going on. So it looks like it's this here. Yeah. Okay. This is all repetitive stuff, right? So this is, and then we've got pagination at the bottom here. So we don't need any of that fancy stuff, but we do need this one. We want to do a for loop. For object in page obj. Remember, this is a list view with pagination. So Django's generic list view passes through a context variable called page object or page obj, and that will only show how many you've set as the pagination number. So it's 10 in our case. So if there's 11 blocks, it will show the first 10. Page 2, it will show 1. Okay, that's how it works. And 4. Okay, if I just save that. Go into blogs, lo and behold, we've got 2. Okay. If I go back in here and go into my views in core, blogs, change that to 1, that will change this and only 1 will display because the other one is now on page 2. Does that make sense? Hopefully it'll make sense. Okay, refill that. We haven't got images in the database. Doesn't matter for now. Blogs. So what have we got here? We have got, we'll keep the image as is because we haven't got anything in a database, but where it says href blog details, we now want this to be URL. How do we do this again? It's core blog, sorry, single quotes, core blog. That points it to the URL line, but we need to pass through keyword argument of value. So it's slug equals object, because that's what we're calling it on a for loop, object.slug. And everywhere we see that, we'll change it to what we just wrote. There we go. So we have a date here. So if we go objects dot created dot date. 3 comments. We haven't got comments there. Don't worry about that. That'll be the title. Object dot title. Object dot body, I think I called it. And do you know what? I'll show you what it does. And then you'll read more. Yeah, that'll work. Right. Okay. So you know, go. Okay. So if you notice, it's rendering the HTML. We don't want that, but you can use the save filter. So if you just use that and then put save, go back in here. There we go. All good. This is the demo. Okay. If we click this now, read more, take us through to the blog detail page. But the blog detail page isn't showing information that we wanted to show, so we can go into the blog page. Have a look at all of this funky stuff. So we've got blog metadata. So what I won't do, I'm not going to go through the specifics because at the end of the day, there's going to be sort of website specific stuff that you don't need to watch. I'm just going to get it to the point where you can park it up, add your own content, and then deploy. And that's kind of the whole point of this. So what have we got? So we've got a P tag here, but we're not going to mess around with that. We're going to just add object, but this is a detail page. The keyword is object, and it will be body with a bar safe. Everything else will remain in there. So I'm looking for something such as, there we go, this is a demo. So you can imagine if I give this to the client could create manually in the admin page what they want to do and or what they want to say on the blog, and it would render directly on this page here. All this stuff on the right hand side I'm probably going to remove. It's a very small, like I say, it's a childcare environment, it's a charity. They don't need this funky stuff on the right hand side. It's just surplus to requirements. What else have we got? We've got the form. One sec. Okay, just add another swig of coffee. Right, so I'm not going to go through all the templates. It's very specific to my needs, very specific to my client's needs. It's going to be different when you design your own website. It's going to be different if you download or purchase and download your own template. Every project, I download loads of templates, done loads over the last 5 years. And all of them are constructed in different ways. They use different classes. They've got different CSS structures, JavaScript structures. What I've just shown you is quite an easy way to get it up and running. You will need to spend probably half a day to a day really finessing things. For instance, if you have frequently asked questions sections, you can do a for loop, and so you can have elements on the left or second column. You can do a for loop and then match the for loop counter to get the odds and the evens. There's loads of funky stuff that you can do, but I'm not going to go through that today because surplus to your requirements. So and I'm also not going to finish off the policies and the policy because it's the same as the blogs. So what I've just done there is effectively the same as what, my cat's come to say hello. It's effectively the same thing as what I would just done in blogs and blogs. So it's kind of, it is what it is. It's for all intents and purposes, it's finished. Same with teams, detail page. You're getting the page obj keyword and you're doing a for loop on it. Any list view is the same. If you want to add things specifically to the view, you have to change the get context method. That's kind of Django stuff, right? So, but I've basically got this here. So outside of this video, I'll probably spend another 2 or 3 hours adding content, adding terminology, adding logos and things like that. But that's just finesse. I mean, essentially we've built the back end, the front end is working, we're just wiring it up. Once it's wired up, we're good to go. I will show you what to do in the settings for production because there are some specific settings that you need to do in that. Other than that, we're basically there. We're probably 85 to 95% of the way through ready to deploy at this current moment. I wouldn't be, certainly to a staging environment. So there's a whole piece of work required for that. That's not part of this video. You need to set up if you're on DigitalOcean, which I do use, link to my referral There's a referral code in the description, so click that if you want to set up an account. Setting up a droplet, which is a virtual machine on DigitalOcean. You need to set up certificates, databases, all sorts of stuff, spaces. So there's loads of stuff you need to set up outside of this video, and that'll take, you know, a few hours in itself. So this is just getting a Django app ready to be thrown at a server that's already been constructed and is ready for the code. Right, so lastly, contact form. This is a little bit different. So what have we got here? So, where's the form? Right, this is the form here. I can't minimize that for some reason. Okay, so we've got contact form. We need a method. So Django is expecting a form submission to be on a method post. You need an action. So what is the URL that we're going to be firing this to? Contact. Okay. Or you could just do request path, something like that. But anyway, let's be explicit. Contact. What we need in a form in Django is a CSRF token. CSRF token. Cross-site something or other forgery token. I can never remember what it is, but it makes sure that who is submitting the form is a real-life human being. It's basically a good method. It passes a token through to the back end and it verifies it via the session. Sorry, I'm having fun here. So what am I doing? I'm trying to do three things at once. CSRF token. There you go. Django does that for you. Save me doing it. Okay. So what you might be used to in Django projects is rendering the form as P. So it would put all inputs as a paragraph. When you're using templates or your own HTML, you'll find that you need more advanced elements in the HTML for it to render properly. You can see here we've got div 6, so this is going to be 2 columns unless it's a mobile, in which it will be 1. You've then got a form group, and then we've got an input field, right? So what we can do is, rather than rendering the form as P, because you do, I think it's form dot as P. Do you know what I look? I can't remember. I very rarely do it like that these days. Go in contact. Oh, there you go. So it's got full name, email, telephone, message. They're the fields that we've constructed in our model form. Okay, but we want it to look like this, right? So what you can do is you can change that input and go form dot name, I think we called it. You can do just take note of the classes, right? So actually form control, we've already got that in our form, in the form. I didn't actually check that, but that's really helpful. You might have had another one called SN123, I don't know. That it depends on who built the template. So just be wary of that, because without those classes, it just wouldn't work properly. So what have we got here? This can be email. Type email, da. What should we have here? This will be form dot telephone. And then lastly, we'll have, no, it's still form control, so we shouldn't have a problem here. Form dot message. I have no idea how this is going to look. I'm missing a div there. Oh no, it's there. Right, okay, so that's the submit button. I don't want that. However, what I might do is change this to 12. So the form will be a 1 line above. Yeah, so it's just changing the CSS to work. Save this. What we got is a button. What's the button? So it's looking for a button, submit button, submit now. I have no idea if it's going to work. I mean, it should do. They worked. They worked lovely. Not a problem at all. But what happened here? Oh, of course, look. Didn't change that one. Okay, I've done something funky there. Right, let's have a quick butchers of what we done there. Form group on. Let's. So it's a text area. Columns 30, rows 6. Is that all it was? What's that data error? Write your message. I'm not going to worry about that either. Let's have a look. Okay, so it's probably something to do with that column or col attribute in the HTML. So it's correct there. Rows, column 40, row 6. So it's just not MD12 ID message. It could be so it is text message, name message, ID message, no. Unless that's what it's looking for. Row 6. Ah, no. Okay, sorry. I'm spending too long on this. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to you. Essentially, I could spend another hour and make this look pretty. I think it's actually, yeah, it's this. So where it says, I was saying 10. Oh, look, there's something going on there. I need to figure it out outside of this, this call. But the form worked. The form looks okay. But let's go ahead and add blah, 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 blah. Right, submit. What does this do? I have no idea if that worked or not. We've got no messaging or anything. No, that really didn't come up with anything, did it? Okay. So let's see if I can fix it quick. If I can't fix it in a minute or two, just talking through what I'm trying to do, then what we'll do is class form inline method post action contact. You know, I probably messed up with that. Contact form, ID contact form. Probably don't need ID contact form unless that's some CSS stuff that I'm unaware of. It's not picking up at all. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that too much because at the end of the day, so essentially what's going on here is we've got a form, some reason or another that is not posting. Now it should be posting. I'm not able to see why. There's no error message or anything like that. So the only thing I can think of is the action. So I'll try this again. If not, I'll have to debug it outside this call. Like I say, it's let's go with let's try that. What is the form? The form now. Container, Yeah, it's contact. Okay. There's something going on. think what it will be. Finally figured that out. It took a minute. There's two reasons why it wasn't working. Firstly, it's because in this particular template we had, let me close some bits. We had a couple of bits in JavaScript. In this active.js, we had the some JavaScript to, on submission of a form, prevent default. So it prevent the submission of a form. Now this is quite common if you're trying to send form submission via Ajax, which I normally do, but we're not for this video. It's just a normal straight up form submission, post submission. So I've commented that out, but then also what I forgot to do in the view itself is save the form. So when the form is submitted, form save, sorry, when the form is valid, you save the form because it's a model form, and then you pass through the super, right? So that's all I needed to do. And now if you look at the form, we don't need this. Open, go to contacts, Bobby at didcoding.com. Don't think you need anything in there other than numbers. Put a little message in there, click submit, that redirects you to home. And then if you look in here, update, there you go. We got another one, right? So the contacts are now working, which is what I wanted to see. So yeah, the next stage from this, which I will go through, I'll go through each of these pages. I'll add images, I'll change all the H1 tags, I'll add a whole bunch of contact. You know, it's going to be a few hours worth of work, but when I'm finished, the website is essentially ready to deploy. Now, before I close the video off, what you need to do is have a look at, close all these down. What we want to do is just have a look at your configuration, right? So at the minute we've been working on dev, and what we've done is we've mimicked what we're doing in dev in production and stage. Now let's not worry about stage, just look at production. No. So what you could do is, rather than passing through a debug variable into your env in a production box, you could just say it is always 0. So in production we will never have debug turned on. That's a good way of doing it. And equally, production 1. Okay, now allowed host will still be the same. You can be explicit. You could just do another dictionary here, and you could have the IP address 178. Whatever the box is. Equally, you could then have what would it be? It would be website name.com. Yeah, that would be the allowed host, and then you set up the Nginx proxy server and Unicorn to make sure that that domain redirects to the correct IP address of the droplet or the VM. Okay, cool. What you also need to do with database, you would change this database configuration to be something more sustainable and scalable, such as Postgres or MySQL. Okay, make sure you do that, because this DB SQLite, all it essentially does, it creates this file in your directory, which is not what you want to do. You want to have a PostgreSQL database, and you would point that towards, if you're using DigitalOcean, I've done videos on this in the past, they provide a host URL for the database. You'd have to create up a user with the right permissions, a password, database name, and things like that. And that's what you put in here. Okay, engine name. You change the engine name. Now look at Django docs for that. It is there's a lot going on in the documentation, but let me quite literally you can search Django database. That'll come up with database Django configurations. So you've got PostgreSQL. So it shows you that you need a different engine. Okay, and you need to pass through these configurations, so keyword, key value pairs. But it's easy enough to do. So that's one thing you need to be mindful of. Also the static files. So it's a very, very different setup for static files if you're pointing it towards an S3 bucket. Again, if you go through Django static S3 AWS, it'll come up with, there you go, storing Django static files in AWS S3. That's a great tutorial. I use it. I would look at test-driven IO all the time just for little sort of hints and tips. It shows you how to add how to create things in in S3, and then how to create the correct installed apps, different bits you need to install, and this is the static file configuration. So you need a whole bunch of variables in your settings file in production that will work in production but not in development. That's why we set that up at the start of this video. It's really, really helpful. Look, they're using Docker Compose. This isn't a Docker Compose video that I'm doing. So yeah, you would need to reconfigure these static file bits and pieces. Other than that, I mean, we're good to go. I mean, we haven't set up site maps or anything, but yeah, this is basically, with a little bit of jiggy pokey with the templates, it's good to go. So I'm going to end it there. I probably will do a couple more other videos just to really sort of hone in on things like site maps and how to deploy it to a server. But for all intents and purposes, we've just built this app from the ground up. We've got it working in the browser, working from a template structure that we purchased. It's taken just under 3 hours. I reckon another 2 to 3 hours work that I will need to do to get this to the point where I'm ready to deploy. So in under 1 day, we've actually done that. So I'm really happy with that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.